Right, grab a brew and listen up. This is Jack Carter, and I'm going to say what a lot of people are already thinking but feel they're not allowed to say out loud. Keir Starmer has become a symbol of disappointment, not delivery. He came in wrapped in this huge promise of competence, seriousness, professionalism.
For change, for national renewal, and a return of politics to public service. When the gap between the sacrifices made by people and the service they receive from politicians grows this big, it leads to a weariness in the heart of a nation, a draining away of the hope, the spirit, the belief in a better future, that we need to move forward together. Now, this wound, this lack of trust, can only be healed by actions, not words. I know that. But we can make a start today with the simple acknowledgement that public service is a privilege and that your government should treat every single person in this country with respect.
And yet, for ordinary people, it feels like nothing meaningful has shifted. If anything, the mood across the country has got worse. Now, I know the establishment likes to pretend criticism of Starmer is just tribal noise or internet rage or some kind of conspiracy from the wrong people. But look around. People who voted Labour because they wanted a reset are now looking at the same bills, the same queues, the same headlines, the same sense that nobody in power is really listening. That's why the question keeps coming back. If he's this unpopular, if the public has clearly lost faith, why is he still there? Let's be brutally honest about what he's actually delivered so far. On migration, we were told there'd be control, seriousness, and a proper grip on the system. Instead, the crisis is still eating resources, hotels are still being used, local communities are still carrying the costs, and the political class still sounds as though it's talking to itself while the country deals with the consequences. You can change the slogans, you can scrap one policy and replace it with another briefing note, but if the numbers and the pressure remain the same, people are not stupid, they notice. And that pattern repeats everywhere. He promised ordinary working people relief, but what do they get? Higher taxes, stubbornly high prices, energy bills that still bite, food costs that leave families doing mental arithmetic at the checkout, and an economic mood that never seems to turn. People aren't asking for miracles, they're asking for breathing room. They're asking for a government that doesn't act like every household is a spreadsheet. That's not radical, that's basic. Then there's the issue of fairness, or the lack of it. A lot of voters were promised that the rules would apply evenly, that the law would feel like law again, and that resentment would ease, because people would trust institutions more. But when some communities feel protected while others feel ignored, when protests are handled one way in one place and another way somewhere else, when ordinary people feel like they're being told to shut up and accept things they never voted for, you get bitterness, you get alienation, you get a country that starts muttering instead of believing. The NHS, same story. Huge waiting lists, hard-working staff under pressure, patients left hanging, GPs stretched to breaking point, and a political class that keeps talking about investment as if seeing the word fixes the reality. It doesn't. People can see when a system is creaking. They can see when appointments are hard to get, when emergency care takes forever, when families are left carrying the stress alone. And if the government's in charge, then the government owns that failure. No amount of polished language changes it. And I haven't even touched the energy nonsense. Net zero deadlines are pushed like moral commandments. But for a lot of households, they just mean more cost, more uncertainty, and a feeling that Britain is deliberately making itself weaker while other countries do whatever suits them. If you keep driving up the price of living in the name of virtue, don't act shocked when people start thinking the whole project is detached from reality. You can't run a country on applause lines and lecture notes. So why won't he resign? Because resignation is not just a personal act. It says the project has failed, the judgment was wrong, and the man at the top can't keep pretending otherwise. And people in power hate that. They don't just fear losing office, they fear the humiliation of being forced to acknowledge they were not as indispensable as they thought. Starmer's spent his whole political life climbing, waiting, positioning, speaking in this careful, lawyerly way that suggests control. He's not built to walk away when the spotlight turns cold. Then there's the Labour machine itself. Parties don't just protect leaders out of affection, they protect them because chaos is expensive. Once you admit the leader is finished, the knives come out, the factions start circling, the press scent blood, and every backbencher with a grievance starts auditioning for the future. So what do? They dig in. They put out supportive statements. They talk about stability. They say patience is needed. But stability for who? Because from where I'm standing, it often just means the public has to be patient while the politicians keep their seats warm. And this is the bit Westminster never likes hearing. Leaders like Starmer survive partly because the people who should challenge them are too timid, too compromised, or too frightened of the fallout. The opposition isn't always strong enough. The media tends to normalise whatever is already in office, and the civil service keeps the machine moving no matter what the public mood is. So the whole system creates a kind of inertia. He can be unpopular, ineffective, and deeply mistrusted, and still stay in place because the machinery of power hates sudden change more than it hates slow decay. That is exactly why so many voters feel trapped. They didn't vote for more of the same with a red rosette. They voted for change. They wanted action, clarity, and some sign that somebody in London understood what life looks like in the real world, on ordinary wages, in ordinary towns, with ordinary pressures. Instead, they got managed expectations, endless explanations, and a government that seems to think better presentation can substitute for better outcomes. It can't. Eventually, the bell comes due. And here's where the real damage happens. The longer a leader clings on while public trust collapses, the more people stop believing that elections matter in any meaningful sense. That's dangerous. Not because one man staying in office is some kind of constitutional crisis by itself, but because it feeds the idea that politics is just a closed club where the same sort of people take turns disappointing everybody else. Once that belief takes hold, turnout drops, cynicism rises, and the country gets more divided, not less. Now, I'm not saying resignation is automatic. Far from it. A Prime Minister usually goes when their own party decides they have become a liability, when the losses start piling up, when by-elections turn toxic, when internal polling gets ugly, when donors panic, or when even the loyalists can no longer pretend the public mood is recoverable. Until then, they cling, they brief, they stall. They tell themselves that if they just get through this week, or this month, or this next announcement, things will calm down. They usually don't. So if you're asking me what would actually force Starmer out, it's not one angry headline. It's a chain reaction. Deeper public rejection, a party mood shift, and the people around him deciding he's more of a problem than a shield. That's when the support starts evaporating. That's when the loyal faces disappear from the cameras. That's when resignation stops being unthinkable and starts being inevitable. Until then, he stays, because power always buys time, even from failure. I want to hear from you in the comments right now. Do you think Keir Starmer is the worst Prime Minister in modern history? Why do you think he's still hanging on despite the terrible approval ratings? What would it actually take for him to resign? Be honest, these opinions matter, because this is about more than one man. It's about whether the country still trusts politics at all. If you're fed up with politicians who promise the world and then betray the people who voted for them, hit subscribe and turn on notifications. I'm Jack Carter. This is Real UK Pulse, and the working class of Britain deserves a lot better than this. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.